Hi, readers. It's Lori. Welcome back to my channel, Books, Ink, and Paper. I am up early this morning because I have an early event that I have to facilitate some tech for. And I tried to edit a video and get it up for today, but I had a lot of difficulty with it. And I don't want to talk about that, but I will fix it, figure it out. It'll be fine, but it's mostly me. So today I thought I would pop in and share something I was going to record anyway, just not necessarily record and edit and post today. So this is a throwback Thursday for the month of October, and I have chosen one of the masters of horror, and that is Stephen King. I have no physical books to show you because the few physical Stephen Kings that I currently own that I replaced are in a box somewhere in my hallway. And I just can't really seem to locate them. I've labeled all those boxes very carefully, and I'm just not feeling like lifting and moving all those boxes today to get to the underside layer, if you will. But I do own several, but not as many as I did at one time. So I'm going to tell you a story which relates to the video that I was trying to edit and post today, but didn't get to. But this was sort of like an addition to that. But I'm not going to tell you what that is, but I am going to tell you a story about my relationship with Stephen King from the start. The first book that I bought and read by Stephen King was Carrie, and it was a new release for me at that time of my life. It was published in 1974, so that would have made me 13. We had just moved to Florida, and I was, I don't know, just curious about this book. And so I picked it up and read it. And I read it really quickly and adored it, although it was maybe more disturbing than I thought it would be. And it had a plot that I thought was just incredibly unique. So I kind of, from that moment on, thought, okay, this is a guy for me to continue to read. And I did, and I have, and I'll share a little bit more about what else I read in a minute. But the big part of this story that I remember is that not long after I finished Carrie, my father came into my room one night looking for something to read. He typically would read in the evenings, and sometimes he would stay awake and sometimes he wouldn't. I have noticed that I have the same kind of proclivity now, but he read a lot of Westerns. He read a lot of mysteries. He read a lot of Tom Clancy, books about, war and different things like that. But he came into my room to see what was on my shelves, and he chose Carrie. And I was so worried about him reading this book and discovering that I had read this book, and maybe he would sort of, be upset by the fact that I had read this book. Also, the subject matter just seemed like something kind of out of his realm. I was a little concerned about this for a couple of nights, and I think it only took him 2 or 3 days to return it to me. He did finish it. And I said, "How did you like it? What did you think?" And he said, "It was interesting." And that's all he said. My dad was a man of few words. I did not get that from him. I got my gift of gab from my mom. But I will say that he never read a Stephen King again, as far as I know. But that was my sort of memorable experience reading Carrie. Over the years, I've read a number of his books. I did read the first number of them that were published pretty much in order. I never did read The Stand. And a few years ago, a friend of mine on Facebook was doing a Stephen King read in order project. So of course we all started off and we were, kind of carrying along, but we didn't get very far because she, I think, gave up after maybe this first two books. I reread the first two, and then I got to The Stand and I started to read it. I couldn't finish it at that time. I have it, I own it, and I've, considered starting it again, but it was just not, it wasn't drawing me in the way some of the others had done. But I still do plan to kind of read that. I wouldn't mind reading them again in order. I think that there is a there's a difference in the way he writes now for sure. Like I've recently read Elevation, which is pretty new. I've read a couple of his newer ones. I was talking to the barista at my Barnes and Noble actually just yesterday. I didn't buy a Stephen King, but I bought a horror novel by someone else. And we were talking about his favorite horror authors. And he said that he listened to Bag of Bones, which I have read before and really did enjoy. And he said it was so well narrated on the audiobook version that I really should take a listen to it. And I think that I would like to do that. But I would eventually like to say I have read all of Stephen King's work, but guess how many books Stephen King has published? I'll just give you a minute while I sip on my coffee on this early morning. Oh, nothing like coffee when you have a 8 a.m. Facilitation. Stephen King has published 179 novels, I think, as of today. If you believe that person that speaks in your home and is in the shape of a little round dot and tells you things that you ask her to research for you. Given who she works for, I would say she's probably accurate because they did start out as a bookseller and now, of course, they sell a number of things. But if I say her name out loud, she'll start asking me what I want. Nevertheless, 179 books in my lifetime is a lot. Some of my favorites that stand out for me are Pet Cemetery, ironically. That one is pretty horrifying, but also I just thought that that was a very unique story, and it was tricky for sure. I really enjoyed The Green Mile. My oldest daughter is reading The Green Mile right now, and as these things kind of happen, my vet the other day when we took the cat and one of the dogs to see him for their annual started talking about the mouse in The Green Mile, and it was driving him crazy that he couldn't remember that mouse's name. So extra points to you today if you can remember the mouse's name in The Green Mile. He ended up looking it up on his phone, but I did enjoy The Green Mile quite a lot, and I really enjoyed Misery as well, which is a novel about a woman who kind of abducts an author and holds him hostage in her home. Some of the movie adaptations of these books are pretty awful. So, for example, I just rewatched the first adaptation of the book It, which I really enjoyed as well. And I was really just touched by how precious it was, but it wasn't particularly well done. And then I watched the newer version of It, which was released not too many years ago, because those boys that were in that version are young men now, but they're not much older than they were then, I wouldn't say. That adaptation is definitely better. There's a new adaptation of Carrie as well. The first one was, done I think in the 80s. This one, of course, came out a few years ago. I think they are scarier, the adaptations, than they were when they were first done. I understand that Stephen King wasn't a fan of those first adaptations, so that was quite something to hear too. One of my favorites, of course, is The Shining, and I still really love The Shining movie adaptation too. That first one with Jack Nicholson, really quite fun to me, and I have watched the second one too, and I thought it was better for sure, but I was equally satisfied with it. Those are just some of the romps that I have decided to take today into my admiration for Stephen King, and as a writer, I think he's very authentic in the way that he talks about this. I actually also have a book by him about writing. I think it's called On Writing. He really is a generous kind of guy. He's very opinionated. He doesn't shy away from telling you what he thinks, even if it's not a popular opinion. He does support a lot of people in his community. His son now is a writer as well. Joe Hill is his name, his pen name anyway. And I think he has entertained me and most of us for decades now. And those of us who love the horror genre probably have at least read one of Stephen King's novels, maybe more than one. Will you join me in reading all 179 in your lifetime? Will I make it through all 179 in my lifetime? I hope so. I mean, it would be a fun project, but it certainly would take over my reading life significantly. Also, let's not forget, he's probably going to write more of them. So it would continue to inch closer to the 200 mark. Thanks for joining me today. Thanks for putting up with my early morning Lori that has to have coffee, my a little bit tired Lori because I had to get up so early today for this facilitation. And I'm feeling a little bit of impact from the fall, the change of season here. We've got some pollen coming in that's new to me and my allergies, and we're trying to make peace with it. I appreciate you. I can't wait to hear your relationship to Stephen King. No worries if you're not a fan, that's quite fine. But let me know which one was the first one that you read and what did you think of it? Thanks, guys, for watching, for commenting, liking, sharing. And as always, happy reading. Bye.